Good afternoon, and welcome to this press conference issued by the governments of both the French side and the Dutch side. I would like to recognize our Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Ms. Sylveria Jacobs, our Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Minister Rodolphe Samuel, the President of the Collectivité of Saint-Martin, Mr. Louis Mussington, and the third Vice President and Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports and Human Development, Ms. Dominique Louisa. Also, our invited guests, Madam Valérie Damaso, President of the Cultural Commission of the Collectivité, and we have Clara Reyes, the Head of the Department of Culture, Mr. Lazana Seku, Project Manager of the House of Nihesi Publishing. We also have a special invited guest, Mr. Fabian Badajo, as well as Mr. Suja Ref. With that, I would like to open the press conference by giving the floor to our Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Minister Rodolphe Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Labega. Culture does things to us as a people, unwritten, unprepared, and today, culture is doing something to us. We are here today because we as a people in our doings have one day being presented with an item, and that item was a flag. It was not given with any mandate. It was given freely to do whatever we wanted to do with it. And from then to now, today, in the present, that flag have done its job. The people have embraced it. The people have loved it. And the people have shown that culturally, that flag has become part of them. And this is what happens in culture. So today, I am very proud to be here together with my colleagues from the southern side of the island and also from the northern side to make a decision to accept the unity flag of St. Martin as a cultural item for both sides of the island. I would like to thank the visionary who created this out of his mind, and that is no one other than Mr. Lazana Seku. I will also like to congratulate the people of St. Martin in its entirety, so both sides. And I would like us to remember this moment today, because there will be more moments like this in the future where an item or something culturally will also present itself, where a decision would be made to accept for both sides of the island. And with this, I would like to say, I am happy that we can do this for the people of the island of St. Martin in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel. I would now like to give the floor to the third Vice President and Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, Sports and Human Development from the Collectivité of St. Martin, Ms. Dominique Louisa.
La culture, c'est ce qui nous unit sur ce territoire. Saint-Martin, que ce soit partie française, partie hollandaise, nous avons exactement les mêmes habitudes. Et c'est pourquoi ce drapeau représente vraiment cette unité de culture, unité d'origine unité au niveau de l'alimentation et unité de territoire. Donc ce drapeau, ce Unity Flag, symbolise vraiment ce que nous sommes sur ce territoire. Quand nous traversons la frontière, nous ne sommes pas en train de nous dire je vais côté hollandais ou côté français. Nous disons je suis à Saint-Martin, Sint Maarten. Donc ce drapeau est vraiment une fierté, je pense, pour notre territoire et ça montre tout simplement que nous sommes qu'un seul peuple. Merci.
Thank you, Madame Louisa. I would now like to give the floor to our well-known author, publisher, and all the other things, the project manager of House of Nehesi, Mr. Lazana Seku, for a few words.
To be able to see this project, this banner, this people's banner, the people's flag, the unity flag, how it has evolved from its unveiling on August 31st, 1990 to date. I'm just going to be brief and thrown out an item that I think is relative to administrations that I think would be interesting, and then you could follow up later with questions and so on. On November 7th, 1990, which was yesterday, the date yesterday, the 7th, myself and members of the ICONs, which was an ad hoc committee that was put together for the unveiling after all of the data was gathered from different sources and so on for a number of years towards the design of this flag and the writing of the descriptions and so forth. And the committee that was put together was called the Information Committee on National Symbols, short for ICONs. And so myself and one or two of the others, we took the description and some decals of the flag to the then mayor of St. Martin, Mr. Albert Fleming. And in that talk, he was interviewed later, and he noted, and this is a front page. Our color newspapers have gone light years from this one, from 1990. And as you can see where he said, I hope that all the people of St. Martin will be proud to fly the national flag. That was the leader of government in the north of our island. On November 8th, 1990, to date, I went to the office of Mr. Claude Watty in the government administration building to invite him to one of the publications that served as the first of two platforms from which people were able to see and read about and come to know this unity flag, which we call the national flag as in nation, as in one people from both sides of the island. And the names evolved that within that short period of time. By December, you were hearing people calling it the people's flag, the cultural flag. If I remember correctly, I think it was Camille Bailey who, on a radio talk, was one of the first that I heard call it the cultural flag. So the name was evolving. By mid-year of the next year, the term unity flag took force, and that's what stayed. And that's what people use it. So when we launch it and unveil it as the national flag, we were clearly in the description of the flag, which you will find in the book National Symbols, which became kind of the third document that served as a platform that carried the flag, the banner, up to now. But anyway, it's the date I want you to see. So on the 8th, to date, November 8th, 1990, I go into the office of Mr. Claude Watty, who was then the leader of government here in the South. And we invite him to this book party. We tell him about the flag and the symbolisms and the anthology collected of political writings, where both sides were looking for new status and so forth. Because remember, too, the late 1980s and the early 1990s were a very intense period of change, political, social, economic change in St. Martin, and activism as well. And so we go, and indeed the next day, so that's the 8th. And the next day he sends us a telefax, and he says, and to read it, he said, and we wish you every success to you and the others involved in this project. It's very interesting. To date, literally to date, back to back, we're dealing with 32 years later, we are in government offices dealing with this banner in this kind of unique ways. I thought that was interesting. Just throw that out in the beginning and before we go into some of the questions. To see these links, I think it's very, very unique. And then later on, if there are questions relative to the colors and so forth, the symbolism and so on, I will gladly be able to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seku, especially for that short historical review of the creation of our St. Martin Unity flag. I would now like to present the president of the Collectivité de Saint Martin, Mr. Louis Mussington.
Good afternoon to the members of the press from both north and south of the islands of St. Martin. I must say how pleased and most of all honored to be here this afternoon on this great occasion. And let me add to that, after listening to Seku's brief intervention, outlining the fact that 32 years later, we are now sitting in a government building on the southern side, promoting together with the Prime Minister, the Minister of Culture, the Minister, well, our Vice President in charge of Culture, Valerie Damoiseau, the President of the Commission on Cultural Matters, the Unity flag. That is, in my opinion, a very proud moment that I'm living right now, and I wish that the entire population of both North and South can relate to my feeling that I'm expressing right now. Much gratitude to you, the members of the committee, who work tirelessly, who work with a strong sense of determination and with much dedication to produce this symbolic unity flag. It says today that as a people, we have a means today of showcasing what is rightfully ours. We have a means today to say, yes, there's something that commonly we can be proud of, and it is called the St. Martin Unity flag. So from that perspective, from that angle, let me again repeat that I'm very pleased, I'm very happy, and very delighted to be here this afternoon. At a given moment, Prime Minister and myself both met in Marigat to discuss, both came with our respective delegation to discuss the possibility of creating a moment when together we can raise the St. Martin Unity flag. And it is during that session that I learned from her and also from Madame Damoiseau that there were attempts made in the past, to which I'm very grateful for as well. To move forward, I am again pleased to know that we managed to overcome certain hurdles. I don't know if they were deliberately placed there to keep back or to stall our great initiative as the leaders of this land, but I'm very happy this afternoon to say that we managed, both on the northern side and also on the southern side, to overcome those obstacles and to be a testimony of the will of the people of this land, both north and south, to say that this flag is ours and we must give it all its importance and we must celebrate its existence that dates back to 32 years, but most importantly, it must be recognized in every event that is organized on the island. But saying that is not new because we all know that whenever there was a cultural event on either side, northern or southern side, whether it's in the church, whether it's in certain functions here and there, the flag stood out as an affirmation of the will of the people to exist as one body, which is the body called the St. Martin body. So again, that's another reason why I'm pleased with this moment this afternoon, because on Friday, the flag with much pride, with much dignity, we're going to raise it in French Quarter in front of the gathering. And it will be also followed by the Lino song, St. Martin is my home. So that to me is a way of saying, yes, we understood the will and aspiration of the people, and my good friend and government on the southern side said it well just now. It's an expression of the people. The people have embraced this flag. You said that correctly, Samuel, and I'm happy that you did that, because that's what I want us to hold on to. The fact that we are expressing as the leaders, we are putting forward the will of the people of the entire land, St. Martin. So we are within our rights to do so, and I'm pleased to say that we have shown the courage, the political will, to stand up bold and proud and say, yes, we stand behind our people. Let me say briefly, before I turn the floor over to the PM, that my inspiration to say to her, let's get it done once and for all, get it out of the way, is when on the morning of the 28th of September 2020, 28, yes. That was the correct date? Okay, thank you so much for the correction. September 16th, well, sometime I hear 18, but anyhow, 16, 2020, when we came out of the rising in Bellevue, and we looked down over the frontier area, and we saw a large crowd coming towards us. People coming from the north, people coming from the south, with their black T-shirt, but with the St. Martin unity flag. That sent a chill through my body. And the fact that we were there by the thousands, all of us with our St. Martin flag, to me, that marked the day when St. Martin people have made a bold decision to say, this is our flag, and this is our land, and no one is going to steal any of it from us. So that proud moment allowed me to say that if I'm given a responsibility to lead this country one day, I would move towards my counterpart on the southern side and say, let's officially recognize this flag. And I was proven right, because here we are today, both of us together saying that yes, the moment, the hour has come when officially we are recognizing the St. Martin flag. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Mussington. I would now like to give the floor to our Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Ms. Sylveria Jacobs.
Thank you so much, Erno. Welcome to our counterparts from the North. It fills my heart to hear the words being spoken here in our press briefing room in Phillipsburg. It marks an important time because we are in the week of celebration of St. Martin Day. St. Martin Day, which came about and was pushed as a celebration of the people from the onset in the persons of Claude Watty and Hubert Petit. The traditions they started continued. But I can remember over the last years, people saying the celebration moving away from the people and becoming too official and too stagnated. And so back in 2016, Valerie Damaso, then Vice President, and myself as Culture Minister took a lot of flack trying to bring the celebration to the people. Not trying to insult Mr. Watty or Mr. Petit by not standing and putting wreaths at the foot of the monument, but by having more traditional celebrations and focusing on that. But we got a lot of flack for it. And so in that process, I also learned a little more of our history, because initially I only saw the monument as separating the island. And the day that we would want to celebrate or commemorate that we as two nations have divided this island is Treaty of Concordia Day, March 23rd. And so I felt, let us keep this cultural celebration of the oneness and not the separateness on St. Martin Day. And that is why Valerie and I, if I may call her that, wanted to celebrate it that way. We're out of government since then. And now, at this point in time, her in a coalition with Mr. Mussington, myself in a coalition with the UP party, we all see the interest that we use this flag as a representation of the people. regardless of the nationality we have as two countries sharing this island, we felt that we share so much more than we have different. We speak of strong roots. Just this week, launching our NDV, our National Development Vision for St. Martin. It speaks in one of the pillars that we discussed today about a compassionate and united society. A compassionate and united society. And it spoke about St. Martin having strong roots and a strong foundation and building on our history. And that is what we're doing today, building on our history, laying a legacy for future St. Martiners to say, hey, back then this was done, and in 2022, this flag was finally seen by governments, because I heard the people on September 16th when we marched to the border from south and from the north, all looking the same, regardless of race, regardless of nationality. We were all there as St. Martiners, standing strong for St. Martin. And so I want to thank the ICON group that came together. I want to thank Lassana Seku, here with us, Mr. Badejo, Mr. Ref, Rhoda Arundel, who's not with us today, but has been with you. You are the grassroots people who have been always promoting our culture on St. Martin, and we are forever indebted to you. Madam Daniela Jeffrey, the late Daniela Jeffrey, she also played an indelible role in ensuring that our history and culture has been written. Clara Reyes, sitting behind me today, another icon of culture who has ensured that our culture remains alive by teaching it to generations and ensuring that every celebration that we put forth highlights our strengths, highlights our culture. And what is unique about St. Martin is that it is a shared culture. It is a culture of the people. And that is what we'll be celebrating come November 11, 2022, St. Martin Day. And doing that totally different, well, a little bit the same, but with an added sense of pride that it is not about the St. Martin, Dutch St. Martin flag or the French flag that we are celebrating, but about the St. Martin unity flag. The Council of Ministers has approved on St. Martin. The governor of St. Martin has signed the national decree, which I have co-signed, which allows us to use this flag owned by Mr. Lassana Seku. And the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport and myself, together with our colleagues, will on St. Martin Day sign that memorandum of understanding to show the world, but especially the St. Martin people, how serious we are about using this flag to represent all of us. We share songs, we share foods, we share ways we dress, we share a whole lot more. The who we are, our national identity as a one island, one people who have one destiny. And I think this flag is a perfect example of that. As a teacher, I used the book, National Symbols of St. Martin, on which this flag was emblazoned, to teach the generations of St. Martin who came after me things that I never learned as a child. And I'm happy to see that more literature is being created to teach not just our children, but our adults and all who would visit our shores. So today is special for me. It's a unique day. I am overwhelmed to hear Lassana say that it is exactly 32 years ago that he had discussions with governments back then. Representation of the local elected people. And today, the local representatives of both sides are showing unity in the best way that we can in the use of the St. Martin unity flag.
I have a question for the Prime Minister and the President. Is it the first step for other common projects, cultural projects?
there's a lot that we do already. We have a lot of MOUs, and of course we have our treaty, which determine how we work together as governments. But the St. Martin Day celebration is one that we do jointly every year. We also have the Treaty of Concordia Day, when my neighbors in the north celebrate Emancipation Day as a cultural day. We celebrate with them, we're invited. And similarly, when we do so on the 1st of, yours is the 27th of April, and we celebrate May, and we celebrate on the 1st of July. We have celebrated in November, usually the International Day of the Child. We celebrate that together. And so I can go on and on in terms of the cultural celebrations that are part and parcel of our daily celebrations, our yearly celebrations. But if there's anything, we have church celebrations around harvest time that we do. We have churches on the Dutch and the French side. So our people, something I didn't mention because I didn't stick to my script, is that we have very strong familial ties, we have very strong business ties, and we have friendships that goes beyond the ages. And so this is what is celebrated. Almost every aspect of our culture is shared with our northern neighbors, and so we continue to do that. If you would see the cultural dress, we've now all adopted the colorful floral dresses in different styles, while in the past, you would see the madras being used by the French because of Guadeloupe's influence. But we did our digging and our research, and now we have cultural dresses that fit for the entire 37 square miles. There's also what you call the patchwork frock from Madame Miss Laurel from Freetown in close to Rambo. The Panam dance originated also from that area, and I am very proud to say, as a artist myself, that I was one of the first in the Motions Dance Company that learned that as a child, and it continues to live. More children know it than knew it back then, when I'm talking back in the 80s. And so we continue to learn more about who we are, and in doing that, grow closer together. And in a world that has been separated by so much, we realize that even within our Caribbean region, we share so much. We even have foods that we call by different names. So we will continue to recognize these symbols that are common to both sides, and we look forward to being able to put those in decrees as well, and moving on to laws and so forth and so on. So that is a goal, at least for us, as we've discussed, but it will take some time to collect, because we recognize a lot of the symbols in our flags, in both flags, but to actually lay it down as shared cultural symbols, I think that is where we need to go to really set the tone for future generations.
In solidarity with what the Prime Minister have just explained, I believe strongly that this celebration and this official recognition of the St. Martin flag, or unity flag, paves the way for more meaningful cooperation in all aspects of life between both sides of the island. We need to look at how we can work at the level of an area of education. I have had 2 or 3 meetings with the president of the University of St. Martin, and we are having a forum, I think, by now to the end of the year at the lycée. And we have invited him to come, talk about the lycée, talk about the university, to see if we can enroll, he could manage to enroll students from the lycée to come to the University of St. Martin. But there's also, in terms of pedagogy, bilingual education is our priority for the future. Madame Louisa and myself, we are both familiar with that process, and we are giving some energy to that. And there's ways that we can cooperate with the southern side in the area of education. As a matter of fact, we are planning on signing our what we call convention with the state of France, the government, the Ministry of Education. And we're going to look at aspects as to how we could cooperate in having the let's say, the linguists on the southern side to help us strengthen the teaching of English on the northern side in the schools. So yes, there are areas in which we can work together jointly to promote our culture, to promote education. Well, I won't go into culture, you just describe everything that should be said in that area, being the artist yourself, and I commend you for that. So in the area of, how to put it, economic development, we talk about taxation to make sure that, you know, that is more coordinated. And so we have to look at that as well. As far as the joint promotion of the island is concerned, I don't know, maybe Damaso, Valerie could say if there's anything in the pipeline as far as cooperation between the northern and the southern side in terms of promoting the island as a one common destination. So let her share some light on that if need be during this press conference. But like I said, the fact that we are acknowledging this unity flag, people embracing this flag, paved the way for us, for we on a political level to say it will be feasible, it will serve both purposes, to really look at how we can better cooperate as one people, one country, one destiny moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Damaso, the President has brought you into this. Do you have some additions?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
So
afternoon.
indeed, since 2018, an MOU, a first MOU was signed with the Minister of TIAT back then, another one in 2019, so that we can join forces in terms of human resources and funds for the promotion of the island as one. Because of course, we do not compete against each other, but we complement each other. So a lot of action has been defined. So key actions that we do on the exterior or even in-house, we do cooperate on that, and I can only continue to hope that this cooperation will continue.
Thank you, Ms. Damaso. I really appreciate that question. It has brought out a lot of history and a lot of that cooperative action of the many moons that we have been united. The next person to ask a question? No questions? Could you pass? Question for you, sir.
Stephen Cyrillian, PJ2 Radio News Department. My question is for the president of the collectivity. You stress, of course, on the many challenges, obstacles leading up to this moment. Can you give us an idea as to how difficult was it to at least realize in this time?
Okay, yes, I did mention the fact that there were obstacles, but in fact, on the 29th of September 2022, we had a very, well, I would say overwhelming support in the council. Of course, you had the opposition who chose to abstain from voting, but that didn't forbid or prevent the majority from approving the fact that, yes, that hour has come for us to really adopt this unity flag. And some of the arguments used and that they were here echoed by other persons in the community is that we didn't organize a referendum. You had that argument that was echoed on the floor of the council. But my response was simple, and it was to say boldly, the referendum was on the 16th of September 2020, because that's the day when the people have spoken. The large number of people gathered at the border to say, remove this border of this obstacle, preventing us from moving from one side of the island, as customary, was to me a clear indication. It was an expression of the will of the people to say, we remain as one strong, united people, and nothing must stand in its way. So being inspired by that bold, brave, and courageous decision of the people, that gave me all the inner strength and the energy needed to go boldly in front of the council and say, this is what we are going to do as the government of St. Martin. And I'm very proud of the gesture that we took. And, you know, there's no regret today. So who want to back and say whatever uselessly, you know, that we shouldn't have, we could go about it differently. Here's another argument that was used. They said that We should have throw it out for a concours, and let the school children get involved. How much can the school children, at the primary school do? We had the leading experts, cultural experts, but thinkers of the land, and a person of Seku, and a person of Sujaref, and a person of Fabian, and a person of Daniela Jeffrey, Alex Richards, and Rhoda Arundel, the top minds of the country who are thinking, who have this vision, how we should develop our future. They came up with this brilliant idea here. So was it fitting to go back and say, put on hold and let's get the school children in 9 years? How much can a 9-year-old say about the choices of the colors used to identify and the symbols on the flag, the pelican, the bird, the tree, the leaves of the, what tree is there? The sandbox tree. How much the young ones in the school would know to be able to come up with that, again, this whole setting that we are so proud of today. So I felt it was useless talk. It's a way of just trying to be in opposition to the government who come up with this wonderful idea, again, inspired, that must be emphasized on, by the will of the people to say the time is now when we got to go forward and affirm our rights to be here and to say this symbol speaks for me, whether it's on the northern or on the southern side. So again, being inspired by that, we went ahead and we do what we had to do. I must add that I was a little bit concerned for the southern side, I must say that. But when I got the word that it was approved, by the council ministers, I was happy because here we can now move jointly, sit here jointly and say, we are moving forward. And that's, to me, I'm sure that this gathering here this afternoon will result in a wonderful participation on Friday, both in Finchquara and wherever we are gathered to speak, to celebrate what you described, these great moments. And let me add this to it. When Dr. Petty and Dr. Wati came together to identify this moment, this day, at least the 11th of November, it was not about a day to be celebrated by neither France nor Holland. It was a day to be celebrated by the people of St. Martin. That's what it has to stand out as. So that's why there's modifications on the 11th of November that you would see, because we want to make sure that that opportunity and standing on the shoulders of those two great men stands out to reflect what they always said was the way to go about it, a celebration of the oneness. The cultural heritage be promoted on that day. Our dishes, our dressing, our music, our books, our history, whatever identifies us as the people of St. Martin, be expressed in such a joyful, enthusiastic way on that particular day. And this is what we are standing to. That's why I feel so emotional about this wonderful moment that we are now living, to be continued and, reflected also on the 11th of November 2022.
The St. Martin Unity flag consists of horizontal bands of yellow, light blue, red, blue, medium blue, and green. The emblem in the canton symbolizing the unity, labor, justice, healing, productivity, and progress is illustrated in black. So just to give you an idea of some of those colors that are represented there and the symbols that are in it. So you'll be able to read that for yourself and take it back home to your media house. The green certainly represents the land of St. Martin, the fertility of our land, the resources of our land, and the potential therein. And so it's a foundation color bar, and it means that through individual initiative and by working together in mutual respect and by the guiding light of liberty, the nurturing bonds of brotherhood and undying love for the land, the people of St. Martin will achieve democracy, equality, justice, peace, independence, greater unity, and prosperity. Now, these are just both the material and the symbolic elements that we put into the description. I think is vital that we see it as it is here. And the way it's recorded here is the base of it. The fundamental reason and purpose and projection from then to now and into our future relative to this banner is unity. It's based on the cultural, historical, the traditional cultural and historical unity of the people of St. Martin. That is the fundamental reason and purpose of this flag. And the type of studies and interviews when I worked as a journalist, certainly from 1986 and 84, 85, 86, when I worked with my brother's newspaper, Junior Lake's newspaper, the Newsday, a number of the interviews from especially elders from Middle Region, from Column Bay, from different parts of our island, in addition to the reading, reference material that we found at the Jubilee Library, and other types of material relative to Caribbean culture, all of that went into the definitions, to the descriptions, to identifying and putting to text and putting to color and putting to symbol what became part of this flag. The brother Suja, for example, mentioned a few days ago how he did 20 interviews for certain aspects, not just of the flag, but relative to the profiles that are in the 3 chapters of the national symbols, which consists of cultural symbols and elements, historical personalities, and the nature, the Great Salt Pond, the lagoon, the flora and fauna of our island, the cultural as well as the actual scientific reasons for them, how they serve us, how we should protect them. All of that is part of what went in, not only into the book, which serves as a platform for the unity flag, but actually went into those elements that defined those colors that I mentioned earlier, and the elements or symbols that's in the emblem of it. I'm just going to read what they are, and then in your description for your readers and listeners and viewers, you would be able to elaborate when you get the text. All right? And so within that emblem in the canton of our flag, you have the Frontier Monument, and indeed, it was set up to recognize the coexistence, the liberty, if you will, to use a philosophical term of the Caribbean, of the people of St. Martin as one people. It went beyond the partition treaty. The partition treaty of Concordia, I challenge that all the time because that was a partition treaty. It divided the island and thus the people. But the historical reality of the St. Martin people, certainly coming up from that unholy period of slavery, right into the traditional period of St. Martin, right into our modernity, if there was one directive, one behavior trait of constantly reaching for each other. One of our officials mentioned not just official relationships, but also families and friendships and commerce and business and trade, including smuggling at certain points in our history as well, right? That constant reaching for, it defied partition. It defied those regimes that set us up in territories. This history, this unity of the St. Martin people is the making of the St. Martin people. In our Caribbean, there's what happened to us, and there's what we did and what we made to make this region what we call today, the making of a Caribbean civilization. And whether we have moved on or we are still territories, we are part of that making still. And the unity flag, the symbols in it coming out of the St. Martin reality or the St. Martin specificity, some of us like to use that term, comes out of that experience. And this constant reaching for unity. Let me give you a brief thing of that. During why we call the Great Salt Pond, on which we are sitting and standing, the cradle of the St. Martin nation. During the unholy period of slavery, that what we call the survivalist period of St. Martin, from 1648 up to 1848, the St. Martin people that worked, the enslaved people that worked on the plantations, needed permission to leave, to go between plantations. But they also needed definitely permissions to go between both sides of the island. So what happens when a 5-year-old child was taken from its parents in St. Peter's and sent to the Marigot Quarter to be a companion to a plantation owner's child, for example? How did that mother feel? You think she never went to look for her child? You think she never ran away and went to look for her child and hurt and bawl and pain for her child? And so it is with lovers that were separated, siblings, parents, older parents that were separated. So what did we do? When we didn't meet, because remember the salt reaping, which gathered most of the people it sucked out all of the labor from all of the plantations to reap the salt, right? So that was the centralizing space on the island where the people met constantly from both sides of the island. I saw one report that when Roland Richardson was over to discover that gave the number of 5,000 people at one period working the Great Salt Pond. I mean, it's just amazing. Because there were periods in our traditional period coming up to the 20s, the 40s, and the 30s where there wasn't 5,000 people on the island. So the Great Salt Pond also sucked in people from St. Bart's, from Sabre Station, to work in the pond. But that's where I was going. So what would the mother do with for that 5-year-old child? She ran away. She ran to see the child. And we committed what you call petit marronage. And petit marronage was like, you're gone for a few days, you're gone for a week. You know when you come back, you're getting blows. But you went, So the petit marronage was crisscrossing that border, even during that most brutal period in our history. So why would you imagine it wouldn't continue during the traditional period, for example, when we were consolidating the symbols that today we call, that's the Martin culture, that's the Martin identity. They were consolidated in that traditional period from 1848 up to 1963. And beyond that, we call it the modern period, because we use material variables for the modern period that Daniela Jeffrey, for example, have in her book, 1963. So that mother would run to see her child, and she would comfort her child. She would sneak into the house. Somebody would help bring the child to the door, and all these kind of things was going, this clandestine behavior. The Punam they mentioned, the Punam before 1848, when it was danced, and the Brim song or the Punam song became twined to it, Abi bin a Hiram, but Massa bin a Haidam, which is a report. It's a reportage. Especially you should love that as media people. It was a report that remained encapsulated because it was telling the story that the news of the emancipation was hidden. Abi bin a Hiram. We've been hearing about it, but Massa bin a Haidam, but the master was hiding it. Abi bin a Hiram, long time. We know it was coming, but he was hiding it. That song became twined with the Punam dance, but the Punam dance is much older than that. And the Punam dance used to be danced in secret. And you have the expert. You have the experts. You have the expert here. But I bring up these things to show you people were always running back and forth. So you can imagine they have a Punam fete going on in the French Quarter. So what do you think? The people from the region who want to compete because we were human beings. So even during that evil period, we still behave like human beings. I have the best Punam dancer out of Rombo. I hear they have a guy up there in that plantation in French Quarter, so he can dance Punam better than me. Some son. I going over there, boy. I want to show them. You bust a run. The Freedom Pass there in what is over there by that run? That Freedom Pass was one of the routes that they would go through to go to the north, back and forth. These are the things that the human being, the human endeavor, and the human engagement to be together, to defy partition, to defy kidnapping and theft, and throwing people from one side to the other against their will, right, was consistent in the St. Martin history. Consistent. It never stopped. That manifestation, and correctly because the people who become part of us, they sense it. Sometimes they become it and don't even know it. I have some wonderful stories I can tell you all as media people later on during the hurricane. People who left, and when they come back, they say, why you come back? You were cussing, you coming back here? Yeah, I went so and so. I have a beautiful story of that from a lady from France, for example. So she went, sick of this trouble, blah, blah, blah. In fact, she left her family, she left the door open. I'm talking about a particular area. She left the door open, I can take it. 2 or 3 months later, my lady tell me, so-and-so's back. She called the lady's name, but I didn't remember the name. I said, who? She said, so-and-so, she came back. I said, who came back? She said, the lady over there by the house, who left the house. She left the house open in a neighborhood and nobody touched nothing in the house. So they came back, right? So I asked the cousin who lived close by, why did she come back? What happened? Yeah, she went to France and they were saying things about St. Martin people and that wasn't true and she wasn't, she had become a St. Martiner, not even realizing it. So she couldn't take what the people where she came from were saying about that island and that people during the hurricane. And she's like, nah, came right back. These are the anecdotal stories, these are the modern stories to that very old story of people wanting to be part of this reality, knowing its value and its beauty. And that is why we saw that turnout across economic hierarchies, across racial groups, across ethnic groups that poured onto that Union Road for the September 16th. The flag embodies that, signifies that, rallies that. It rallies all the people. We know what our people look like. We know what St. Martin people look like. We know the island is still that type of size. We know. And when you marched, the president said when they stood on the hill, with the Prime Minister and they saw the people, they got chills. But when you came down, you can tell who was here for 200 years. You also know who came 20 years ago. But they were marching correctly as the Prime Minister, as St. Martin people, as St. Martin. That is part of what this flag represents. In its essence, from the very beginning, without discrimination, it's fundamentally a symbol of unity that is based on the traditional and the historical unity of the St. Martin people that was forged during very adverse times, survived during that traditional period when we were forging those elements that we call that's St. Martin identity, that's St. Martin, and now into our modern time as we are evolving into our futures, you know, that we want to be prosperous, we want to be progressive, we want to be united still. And this banner, because it wasn't there before. We didn't have such a symbol before that we could take home, we could wrap ourselves in, you know, we can wave at each other, we can get on, we can rave it for Carnival. Did you see how many people used it for Carnival this year? It shocked me. But I shouldn't be somebody who works in the culture and works in the arts and so on. Because of what happened on the 16th, I should not have been surprised. And yet it surprised me at the use of it on the Carnival stage in Troy. And in the region, we always say, when you reach the Carnival stage, well, you reach. You know, you know, they say before the politicians didn't want the Calypsonians to sing about them at all, right? But when the Calypsonians sing about you, everybody like, yeah, you know. Now the politicians, whether they do bad or good, they how come you don't sing nothing about me this year? Now they want the Calypsonians to sing about them. But it's just a cultural megaphone, a platform of sorts. So I just wanted you to know that those symbols were that. And so in that emblem, we have the stars representing both nations. We have the sword of St. Martin. We have the aloe plant related to healing and curing. We have the sandbox tree, the leaves and so forth, and the tamarind tree, the leaves and the fruit as well that embraces the canton. And then at the height of it, on the top of it, we have the brown pelican, which is great. And I'm just going to read the last piece to you, relative to us and our children. Again, regardless of where we come from, that we are now part of this St. Martin nation. The crowning glory of the emblem in the brown is the brown pelican in flight. The brown pelican is St. Martin's national bird and is facing east on the national flag. The pelican symbolizes grace, resourcefulness, courage, and sacrifice. It is said that during times of hardship, this noble and courageous bird will tear open its breast with its beak and feed its young on its own blood, meaning that the pelican will sacrifice its life by any means necessary so that the young, the future, will be provided with an opportunity to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seku. And that's a really good historical perspective. And if I may add before we move on, it's so interesting that we're talking about it's an absolutely amazing situation and information relative to the creation of the St. Martin Unity flag. And I look at it as one flag shared and ratified between two nations, but totally representing one people. A flag is usually individualized to a nation. So we've come a long way over the 32 years, and that's why we're here and taking as much time as we think is necessary to make sure that the youth and that the Pelican can continue to support and protect the youth. Prime Minister, sorry for intervening at this point, but you have something else to add?
I was just checking with my colleague if he had any closing statements. I
very
just had
brief.
one
Okay.
point.
No, I just want to see this opportunity, if you permit me, to strongly encourage each and every St. Martin, those who choose to make St. Martin their home as well, to please wear proudly your flag on your car, on your house, on your business. Showcase that unity, that spirit of unity that exists, that we are strengthening and encouraging. And most importantly, to be part of the ceremony on the 11th of November 2022. I'm asking the entire population to be there, to be part of this historic moment. We're moving from one stage to another. So this is a great moment that we all should be part of. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President. I wanted to address a question that Mr. Cerillion asked in terms of problems. I think here in the South, we also face questions as to whether a referendum should have been done, whether we should have taken it to the people, etc. And similarly to President, we felt that a term that I want to coin from Lasana, it is the groundswell of sentiments from the people that caused this decision to be made. It wasn't something that politicians thought about. It was a response to the cry of the people. And I think some of the people have a challenge because they think in us saying this is a unity, the St. Martin unity flag that represents the entire island, that it somehow diminishes the St. Martin flag, which I wear here as a member of government wherever I go. That does not diminish it. So I just want people to know that in our legislation, this flag that is standing behind of Erno, the laws describe how other flags fly in regard to it. We have our Flag Day, and we have our Constitution Day in which we gained a new status, in which nobody can wave the flag higher than me, because that is a celebration for the southern side. And at times, I always felt like it's a separation. But of course, if you put the St. Martin Unity flag on your car, as a Dutch St. Martiner, you would have to have the St. Martin flag as well. So that is why when we give out the flags, we give out both to our people, because that is just the law of the land. What we are doing with this ceremony, with our signing on St. Martin Day, is as a people saying that this flag, the St. Martin Unity flag, is not Dutch, it's not French, it's of all the people of St. Martin. All the people of St. Martin, indigenous, with history and blood in the soil, but also all the people who have come to St. Martin and made St. Martin their home, like Lasana described, that they will leave and always come back. Something, and I say it's a salt, always draws people to St. Martin, and that's why we have so many people here. So as we celebrate the week of St. Martin Day, as we launch the national vision for St. Martin for the future, to see where we're going, we are building a nation. And this is part of it, because it's all about the people. And I thank everyone for coming out this afternoon. I thank you for tuning in. And for those that still have questions, send them. They will be responded to, and we will share all the necessary information so that those with concerns can be laid to rest. Nothing is being replaced. Something is being added to the celebration of unity for the people, all of the people of our sweet St. Martin land.
Thank you, Minister Jacobs. I see the hand of Minister Samuel. You would like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Labega. Just to wrap up, I would like to make use of this opportunity to invite all the people of St. Martin, both sides, to come out to the celebrations on the 11th of November and be part of this special historic moment. Don't forget to get your flags, and if you have the flag on your car, on that day, just take it off and walk with it so that you can raise it at that historic moment. So I invite everyone, go and get your flags and display them proudly. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Televiewers, radio listeners, live streamers, ladies and gentlemen, media, this brings us to the end of this press conference. And if I may add one thing, during the football season, the World Cup, I would love to see a space on your car where the unity flag is added to the St. Martin flag and the other flags. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. Our diplomats from both sides of the island, thank you very much for being here with us.